So recently, I've been thinking a lot about how throughout my entire life, I've always kind of judged people based on the company that they've kept. You know, everyone's heard birds of a feather flock together, and I've always thought that to be very true, right? So if I see someone hanging out with a bunch of people who like actively steal, right, I'm gonna assume that person probably also steals. Therefore, maybe I wouldn't want to really be friends with that person anymore. And I've kind of let this line of thinking stop me from making friendships throughout the years because I'll meet someone, get to know them, get to know their friends, and then once I get to know their friends, I kind of start judging them for their friends' actions, and then maybe at that point I'll drift away from them. And I think that this is a relatively safe thing because more often than not, the birds of a feather flock together thing is accurate, but it's not in all cases. And I've noticed as my life has gone on and I've made more friends that I'm almost now more accepting of those friends of my friends because I've come to realize that despite, yes, they could give you insight into that person's true intentions. Like, for instance, if you're dating a girl and all of her friends cheat, chances are, brother, like you're getting cheated on, right? Like that's not rocket science, and that's a safeguard that if you see that, you should be able to make the executive decision of, okay, maybe this person who I'm getting close to isn't the best person to get close to. But then there's also people who might be friends with people who steal, but they have the best moral compass, right? And they would never steal in a million years. They just don't really let it bother them enough to end that friendship with their friends. And I think that's kind of where the original thought stemmed from when I thought of it, was how often are people making friends with people who might have different morals than them, or might have totally different interests in them, or maybe are okay with doing bad things, right? But they aren't. And I feel like that's not really common, which is again why it's usually safe to make the assumption off bat. But I think it is something that I've been seeing more and more as I've gotten older. And I don't know if it's a maturity thing to where when you're getting older, you kind of stop caring about that stuff as much and you can tell someone's true intentions, or if it's that you just don't care anymore, right? And you realize it's just not that big of a deal and it doesn't really have an effect on you. Of course, it depends on what it is. Like if your friend is murdering people, probably not the best person to be around. I think cheating is on that level too, honestly. Like I don't think I'd really be friends with someone who cheats because I think that's like, that is diabolically evil, right? So where I just wouldn't want that in my life. But even the stealing thing, right? Like back when I was a kid, if you told me that I would have a friend who actively like goes into Chipotle and steals the mobile orders, like I think that's terrible. And I think that that's like morally wrong in every way, right? Because you're wasting their time, the employee, and then you're wasting the person who's going to pick it up's time. Like who knows, maybe they're already having a bad day. Like it's just not a good thing to do, right? But I still have a friend who does that. The difference is that, is he my best friend? No. Do I talk to him every day? No. But I still would consider him a friend over just an acquaintance, right? And again, that's something I never really would have allowed as a younger person, is because I hold my morals in very high regard. So if someone had different morals than me, I wouldn't really want them in my life. But also in life, you always hear that opposites attract, right? And usually it's used in a relationship sense, but I think it kind of applies to friendships as well. And I wonder, how true is that over the birds flock together statement? Because most people I've found throughout life have their friends, which are, you know, a group of maybe 3 to 5 individuals who are very, very close to them. You know, it's the main group chat, right? Of people that you talk to pretty much every single day and that you never get tired of. Then they have the extended friend group, right? This might be including those base friends I talked about, but you know, this goes up to maybe even like 10-ish people, right? You have a lot of people in this group chat, and these are the people that you talk to and you really like, but you're not talking to them every day. And if you're hanging out with any of them one-on-one, you kind of have to put in more effort into the conversation. You know, you can't just shut off your brain and start talking. You have to actually think about making conversation. And in this group of friends, I think that the fun friends, quote, category of friend also might appear or be borderline on the edge of it, which are those friends that you pretty much just have for like fun activities. I think like going out, right? Like I have my regular friends, and then I have a group of friends that exclusively like going to bars. So when I want to go to bars, it's more often than not that I'll go with that, you know, the fun friends, even though my regular friends are fun. It's just in different ways, right? And these fun friends are where I think most people are more accepting of a moral difference, because their purpose, when you think of them, isn't exactly this is who's going to be at my wedding. Like, I don't know. I don't really think that long term about it. I think more of like, oh, I like doing this thing and these people also like doing this thing. So now we will be doing this thing together, right? And it doesn't really matter if our morals don't align because our morals have nothing to do with the thing we're doing. But then I could also get into that because despite an activity not necessarily calling morals into question, even if your morals don't align, they do apply to pretty much every single situation, whether you realize it or not. So even if you make that exception because it's like, oh, going to bars doesn't require them to not steal, like, yeah, that's pretty true. But just the fact you guys have different morals to begin with means that your character's probably a bit different based on your definition of a good character versus bad character. I don't know. It's just this whole thing I could go into, right? Of how morals really do affect everything. But for those fun friends, you just don't really think about it as much. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, right? I think that that's an okay thing to do as long as you're not making exceptions for true evil people. Like I said before, like cheating is kind of one of the things I draw the line on, where if I know someone's an active cheater, I don't even want to go out with them anymore because that's just so gross to me that it would always be in my head and I wouldn't really be able to get over it. Versus the Chipotle example I used before, if I'm at a bar with that friend and I'm looking at them, am I thinking, oh man, he runs into Chipotle and steals mobile orders from them? Like, no, not really. I do think of that sometimes and I think it's wrong, and obviously I tell the kid it's wrong, but it's not enough to ruin the fun time that I have with him to where I would still then call him a friend. Now, when it comes to other people, I know my own life and I know the decisions that I make, right? So when I make the decision to be friends with that kid, I understand that I don't think I'm breaching my own morals to do so. However, I don't know other people's lives. So if I see someone who's surrounded by people who all cheat, for instance, something I'm not okay with, they might be okay with it. It might not bother them the same way that the Chipotle thing doesn't bother me because it's not really relevant to the situation. They might think cheating is the exact same thing, to where, yes, it bothers them that their friends cheat, they don't like it, but it doesn't apply to them. Therefore, they can still have fun with those people. And that's totally fine. But then from my perspective, since I view cheating different, I then will see them as having bad friends. And then I'll start thinking, I wonder if they're actually a bad person because look at who they're surrounding themselves with. And it's just difficult because I don't necessarily know if those are the main friends, the extended friends, the fun friends, right? I don't know the whole relationship of the friend group. I don't know if the person actually is bothered by their actions or if they couldn't care less and they partake in it, right? It's very hard to judge all that. And by the time you're able to make the distinction, you're probably already in too deep. If you're getting into the nitty gritty of morals with someone, chances are you're probably friendly enough with them to where you'll have some sort of lasting relationship, whether it be a friendship or an acquaintance-esque type extended friendship, whatever. So it's just interesting because if you want to kind of keep yourself the safest, quote, from bad people who might have bad influence on you in life, then you kind of have to accept that you're gonna get rid of some people who don't necessarily deserve to be judged in that manner, right? You're gonna get rid of someone who has a perfectly clean moral sheet, but they're so morally good, in fact, that they are friends with these people to actively try to help them change for the better, right? And you'll never know that. And you might drop this person not knowing that because you assume that they're morally unjust. So while I try to keep an open mind about this kind of stuff and realize that it is hypocritical of me to totally judge someone based off of their friends and make decisions on them based off of how their friends act, it's still something that I think is important to do in life because it's kind of a natural deterrent towards allowing yourself to be surrounded by negative people. It's the same as when you're a kid and your parents wouldn't want you to hang out with delinquents, right? Because they'll have a negative impact on your life moving forward and you're more likely to be like them. It's the same thing as an adult. You're influenced so heavily by your friends, and your choice of who you decide to be your friend and spend a lot of your time with, I think, says a lot about you. Given that message that it says could be misconstrued or misinterpreted, but the message is still loud. So I don't know. It's just something I've been thinking about because I don't know if it's something that I necessarily am doing correct or if it's something that I could work on, right? So I've just been thinking about if it's better or worse for me long term to be judgmental of people's friends and who they hang out with. I have no idea. I have no idea what the right answer is, so I don't know.